There's a real sense of community that comes from watching a story unfolding in real time with an audience of your peers. TV, movies, games, novels. It feels great to witness the progression of a well-told tale, no matter what medium, especially when it's a story with a few twists and turns plotted along the course. Web series are no different, and are perhaps the most open field to this kind of treatment. The moment a new episode of your favorite show is uploaded, people react in the comment section right away, send out tweets, get talking even as they watch it for the first time. It feels more immediate than live TV does, more personal and exciting. And nothing gets people more excited and captivated than watching plots twisting beyond expectation. It's not about figuring out how the magician does his tricks anymore. It's about waiting to see just how much the magician will throw us for a curve on the next big trick. Diversion, subversion, sleight of hand, broken expectations, long setups we should have seen coming, and just plain being expertly played. This is what the web series field is really made of. Deceive us and shock us in a convincing and really well-written way, and you've done right by your audience. I think some serious praise in this department goes to something that's had more staying power than most night vision entries I've covered. Seventybroad, which at the time was quite an odd and sudden anomaly. The story of George and his life on the run went viral after opening with a raw, erratic confession of murder filmed from an abandoned building. The actor portraying George put on a performance strong enough to concern a few websites, prompting news articles to be made begging the question of whether or not this was legitimate. During the viral phase, I caught wind of the channel, took a look, and made a video as quickly as I could, fearing that this could turn into another situation like the rumor storm that surrounded a apparently kidnapped vlogger, Marina Joyce, if you all remember that calamity. Seventybroad was definitely fiction. Really well done fiction. Of this, I was absolutely certain, and word needed to get out before its reputation got out of hand. In the first arc of the story, it seemed there would be a major twist coming along that would take the audience by surprise. It was hinted at constantly by what seemed to be George's alter ego, who knew he had an obsession with the TV hit Breaking Bad. During my video, I predicted that the twist would be much better than George just coming out and saying it was all fiction. It couldn't be that sudden shutdown that kills a lot of good things that just get started in this field. But 3 months after I said that, Seventybroad threw us all for a major loop by doing precisely that, delivering a questions and answer video that opened like this.
I was just fucking with you.
And then, in the same video, George gives us this.
Thanks to everybody who's been following Seventybroad. I've been playing it for well over a year now. It means a lot to me. What? Okay. Maybe I'm being a bit mean. Okay. That was fun though. You can't deny that was fun. But yeah, if anything, this is just a bit of a wake-up call. I had over like 100 people believe me when I said this was, you know, I've had people saying it to me since the beginning. I've had people telling me that, you know, oh, this is so fake, oh, what's going on? And I was like, well, you know what, if people think it's fake, maybe I'll just come out and say it's fake and fuck with everyone. Yeah, thank you though, thank you for all being here for me, okay? It means a lot to me. I was just fucking with you, I'm sorry.
He was getting so much feedback from viewers that he was just telling a story, running an ARG and being fake that he decided to play into the accusations and confirm it all for a gag. It's a fake reveal. George the character, a killer on the run, is still with us. And then the following day he's not, as a pretty serious video shattering all suspension of disbelief goes up, postponing uploads due to police involvement.
I started Seventybroad about 3 or 4 months ago. And when it first came out, my confession, I'm so sorry, gun in it. There was a gun in it. And I know this has brought up a lot of speculation. You know, oh, this must be fake. Because, you know, how can somebody in Britain get a gun? Here's the thing about that weapon, which I didn't know. That gun is a starting pistol. You'd think logically, pistol, you know, why would it be illegal? It's a starting gun, it can't do any damage. Apparently, about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a law passed, and that law stated that this particular weapon was illegal in this country. So yeah, this weapon's illegal in this country. This weapon, you know, which you have to modify. Yeah. And I hear a bang at the door. And I go to answer the... Well, I don't go to answer the door. My mother goes to answer the door. And she's like, George, get down here. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And she says, there's police at the door armed with guns. I'm like, oh, fuck? So yeah, at the time I was planning to use this gun, which I thought was just a prop gun, as a prop. As a prop. So the police like, just come on, George, just calm down, George. Meanwhile they're holding the MP5 and like, calm down, George. Okay, just tell us where the gun is. I'm like, okay, it's upstairs in my cupboard. In my cupboard is just where I keep it, you know. And then I get arrested. No handcuffs because I'm not doing anything really, you know, to threaten the police officers. You know, they can sort of see, they're sort of like, why are we really here? There's clearly no threat. So I get taken away, and I'll have to spend, about 20 hours in a jail cell. At the end of the 20 hours, I get called out. And yeah, they tell me, they sort of, first they ask about the series, and I have to explain to them what it is. I have to explain that, yeah, you know, obviously it's not real. I mean, you know, and they're like, oh, it's very well acted. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, all in all, I don't really know where I am at the moment. And that's sort of why right now I need to not do this. I mean, there's a few reasons. One, you know, the whole police charge thing, and two, my my mum really doesn't want me to. You know, it's like when I went and I released the video yesterday, and my mum found out that I released it, she went absolutely crazy at me. She went absolutely crazy at me. She was like, "Why are you still going down there? You know, why? You know, you could be caught. You could, you know, they could look at this as you not really caring." Yeah.
So immediately after the fake reveal, we get a genuine reveal, but under some pretty awful circumstances. What wasn't expected to happen did happen. George opened up and admitted that the series was fiction. But at the same time, this was a reveal that was never planned. His hand was forced because he landed in serious trouble. And it only gets worse from here as George, the real George behind the character, begins uploading vlogs letting us know how being visited by the police is affecting him. Soon we learn his university is threatening his status as a student because of the police charges and the series that he made, and the possible consequences of his arrest begin to become clear. This is where Seventybroad took a lot of viewers, including myself, to a very difficult place. George's uploads were convincing. Very convincing. By the way that everything was presented, he very well could have been visited by the police, and the evidence that he provided for his university trouble was considerable. George seemed like a man in trouble who was trying to keep his spirits up. He had gone from web series creator to vlogger in an attempt to deal with his situation, bringing the community that he had gathered closer to him as we were all robbed of the story being made. It might seem odd to some, but it genuinely felt like an emotional and mental coping mechanism for George while also being the act of somebody who felt a responsibility and loyalty to his viewers. But something was kind of off about this. For certain videos, George seemed to end on what felt like a cliffhanger to an episode from a TV show rather than just signing off for a real vlog. Portions of the videos felt slightly scripted, and while George was as serious as could be in discussing his difficulty with the police and his university, when you stopped to think about the situation, doubt creeped in. Could he actually have run into trouble from the police for owning something that had been outlawed? Yes, absolutely, especially because George is convinced that somebody he personally knows called the police on him to mess with his web series. The issue with anybody trying to make a series they personally act in is that somebody will recognize them and try to cause a problem. And here, we see that's likely what's going on. George even brings up that somebody attempted to blackmail him during these events. Now, could the university really be taking action against him because of his web series? Less likely, I think, because a student is almost expected to have a weird and potentially scary online presence that clashes with the university's image. If anything, the police charge would be the reason for terminating George as a student, but the circumstances aren't enough to warrant termination, really, and he hasn't even had his first hearing. Seventybroad was playing a game of dead or alive so tightly that it just couldn't be called. Was the story actually ongoing? Was this planned and all a work of fiction? Is George being legitimate about actually getting into trouble, but using the channel to vlog as a way of coping? There were only slight signs that this could be false coming up every now and then throughout an atmosphere of being legitimate. And just in case this was really happening, would anyone honestly want to make George feel worse by claiming that he was still acting? Thankfully, the scales began to weigh in favor of one side when George began making Vlogmas videos, a series in which he lampoons vlogger culture by being a bubbly psycho on a rampage. George's new Vlogmas character ends up covered in blood, pretends to drown, kidnaps a woman, and kills her, all while having a hearty vlogger smile. These videos are uploaded between genuine updates on how George is dealing with his current problems, which are, as you might guess, being made worse by the Vlogmas videos. George makes a few scary videos and gets reported to the police. George makes even more scary videos after dealing with the police, and, sure enough, they come back. Seems logical, but it also seems like storytelling. That's where the problem lies with Seventybroad during this time. What you can rely on for evidence is George's behavior and his decision to make Vlogmas knowing what he was dealing with. Very few people would actually do this kind of thing when they know they're already in trouble. George might be the kind of character to go against better judgment and be stubborn, but he's also very concerned about being expelled from his university. And this is where the case for fiction begins to really heat up. George actually does get expelled from school, and he's unable to tell his parents because he's been hiding just how bad the situation with the police actually is. Unfortunately, his stepfather finds out and gives George a call, saying that he's going to tell his mother, which is George's ultimate fear. He then gets in trouble with the landlord at his university housing, who seems to have been informed that George is no longer able to use student accommodations. It appears he's going to be kicked out of the residence, and after the argument with his stepfather, he's afraid to go home. The next video, forcibly removed, reveals his fate. A housemate takes the camera from George and films him while he attempts to deal with his landlord's son, who has come to evict him. The housemate is only just learning about this and is furious. George is upset and unsure of what to do, but gets removed before he can even pack. He manages to take the camera and laptop with him that night and comes back the next day to sneak in and claim the rest of his belongings. We also get to see George's new home, his car. Expelled, evicted, and wary of going to his actual house, there's nowhere else to go until the first police hearing date arrives. George is committed to staying in touch with his audience, however. He buys a power converter from Amazon to charge his phone and laptop in the car, and, feeling lonely on the road, holds a few live streams at night with his most loyal viewers. Are you starting to lose your belief in the reality of George's life yet? How about when he gets mugged by somebody at knife point during a live stream after being stalked by a van a few nights in a row? And how about when the mugger contacts him just to lead George around and make him film ridiculous things in embarrassing places? I think the titles of the last few videos are enough to finally tip the scales over all the way personally. I returned to Seventybroad and found something interesting. Those titles don't belong to a new season of George's Vlogmas series, by the way. They're actually updates from the road. And while he may have had us teetering on the fence before about whether or not this is fiction, this is enough to tip us over onto one side for good. And yet, he's still doing a killer job at playing the role he's now taken. Seventybroad is an animal unlike anything else that I've seen online. I should have classified this as a night vision entry instead of a one-time video because it totally fits the bill. We are watching a web series about a guy who makes a web series that ruins his life, and the slow destruction of everything he had in place as consequence of making that web series is actually the transformation of his reality into a web series. George is experiencing a twisted, self-fulfilling prophecy. His character during the first arc of Seventybroad actually did get expelled from university, which began the unraveling of that character's life, leading to drug addiction and the rage-induced murder of his mother. During my first video on Seventybroad, I put forward the idea that the big twist might be that George had gotten so wrapped up in his character he began to believe his role, so he became mentally trapped in the fiction. It actually appears to be the reverse. He broke character to explain that we were watching a story, bringing us into reality, and now the fiction has come back to swallow his life. Of all the outcomes I was thinking of, I didn't expect this, and I especially didn't expect to be so expertly tricked into believing the alternate reality that George presented during the police trouble arc. I had to have my doubt. I really truly did, because I know this field of storytelling relies on deception. But for a while, I could not have given anybody an answer on whether or not I thought Seventybroad was still telling a story. At this point, it's obvious, but it was really touch and go for a bit. I didn't want to think that George was in serious trouble, but let's face it, we've seen so much more completely stupid things happen to people as consequence of what they've put online. People have been fired over selfies posted to Facebook. Is it really that hard to believe that a student could be expelled from college for a really dark web series featuring a gun that was illegal to own? At times, I genuinely wanted to reach out and talk to George, the creator, to know he was actually doing okay. But if I did that and the story was still going on, I would have been interfering. I was tempted though, and that alone deserves a round of applause. George put up enough of an act for me to actually be concerned to the point that I considered contacting him and breaking the creator-reviewer wall. I have never seen a series do that. I haven't seen a series do any of what George has done, actually. The closest example I can think of is the beginning of Everyman Hybrid, but Seventybroad has flown in such a different direction that you can only make light comparisons. We're watching a web series about a guy who makes a web series that ends up turning his life into a web series. The last time I saw something this intelligent on a meta level, it was made by Alan Resnick. Make no mistake, Seventybroad is definitely fiction. I'm calling it now. It's fake. It is a series. It's fiction. It had me going. It had a lot of us going. But this is a web series through and through. One of the biggest hints can be found in the video descriptions, where George is now referred to in third person during a summary of what occurs in the upload, as if it were an episode of a TV show. You'll find the same treatment has been given to the playlists that seem to cut the channel up into series arcs. During the latest, Cabin Fever, we find this. Expelled, a possible prison sentence hanging over him, homeless and living in his car. George's life goes downhill. It might as well be a Netflix synopsis. Whenever something flares up as quickly and brightly as Seventybroad did, I anticipate a burnout. It's just the way that most things go, especially when they open with a major impact. But this series not only kept going, it picked up speed and is now delivering more than ever. Think about how insanely dedicated you have to be to set up your car as if you're living in it, actually buy equipment to run your computer from it, and then have live streams from the car for over an hour to a crowd of only about 860 people 7 times in a row. Only the creator of Petscop seems to be as dedicated as George when it comes to pulling a story off and putting in the effort. Can we also congratulate George for holding down a seriously consistent crowd of over 800 people for over 8 months? Like anybody on YouTube, his numbers are up and down in certain spots, especially around the time that Seventybroad was covered by news outlets, but he's been very consistent in keeping a crowd, and it's no mystery why. George is just a fun character. He's a personality that you like and enjoy watching. He's a little bit foolish and a little bit crazy, but he's kind of magnetic. Even poking your head into a live stream to see him fooling around in his car is entertaining. People are sticking around, which is awesome enough to see, but I understand it's not just because they're supportive of a new creator carrying on after having such a major media boom at the start. You like George, and you want to see what happens to him. Or you just like seeing what happens to him, because, let's face it, pretty much anything can happen at this point. And that's where I really have to leave it for this update, because I can't tell you what's going to happen in Seventybroad. We're in totally unfamiliar territory compared to where we were. No prophecies, no hints, no clues, no symbolism. I have absolutely no idea where this is going, and I love it. If you haven't already, subscribe to Seventybroad and get on board before another story arc takes place. You really don't have to do very much for catching up at all. George made a web series, got in trouble with police, got kicked out of school, is living in his car, got mugged by a stalker who sent him to a weird location, and perhaps all of this may come together in some way. Or not. This is George's wild ride, and we're all just strapped in. Wherever he wants to go is where we'll end up, and it's clear there's no telling what the tour includes. There are more surprises coming from this web series. Of that, I am sure. What they'll be is anybody's guess, but you know I'll be watching, and I sincerely hope you'll join me in doing so. Once again, check out Seventybroad and subscribe if you haven't yet done so, and watch any videos you feel you need to in order to have a more thorough sense of the story so far. Major thanks to all of you for watching, and to all of my supporters on Patreon who make it possible for me to create videos without having to live in a car. Stick around to the end of the video to see the names of all of these creatures of the night. Thanks for joining me in the talk again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and like another plot twist in the life of George, I'll be seeing you again real soon. Sleep tight.